so happy we alive.
Dr. Tom O'Connell, who writes for Common Sense for Drug Policy, has been working on a theory that Deborah mentioned that draws a straight line from the Constitutional Congress of 1787 and right through slavery and through segregation and Jim Crow, and winding up, pointing straight at the war on drugs as the new, preferred, and only remaining bastion of repression and control of minorities in this country. Of course, it wasn't a planned conspiracy hatched out in a smoke-filled room full of Ku Klux Klanners, but it was a case of deep-seated habitual actions on the part of both the oppressor and the oppressed. It was passive racism by politicians who thump their chest and proclaim that they are saving white children, while in the deep recesses of their minds, they harbor an image of a black man as a criminal. Minorities and whites need to think about the problem from a little different perspective. They have got to understand that the problem is classism and not so much racism. I see time and time again, blacks and whites with the wherewithal get off, while those with lesser means do the hard time. I spent a year substitute teaching in inner-city Hartford schools just to get a feel from the children how the drug war affects them. But the first thing I had to do was to get their respect. And I got lucky. I really got lucky. There's always the smell of marijuana around the schools. And one day I just went in and blurted it out. Oh, I'm just so sick and tired of this, smelling this marijuana. And one of the students turned around and he said to me, "Have you ever smoked marijuana?" I said, "Yes." And that got his attention. Later on, another one asked me, "How long have you smoked marijuana?" I said, "About 2 weeks ago." You could hear a pin drop. Now, I had this class for a month. It was an English class. And what I did with that was I started talking about drug policy and the problems they faced, and teaching them how to use the web and to obtain this information so they could write papers about pro and con about legalization. Well, do you know, there was only 26 people in class when I went there. By the beginning of the second week, there was something pretty close to 40. They had told their children, "We have a man in here that's willing to talk to us straight up." That's how you had to get their respect. You have to level with them. The other thing that I found out, and much to my dismay, and they, by the way, they don't call it smoking pot or marijuana, they call it smoking trees. The other thing that I found out was that many of these children, they don't have homes to go to. A lot of these children, both parents are working, so they don't have time to spend with them. A lot of these children have parents who are on drugs. So it's very difficult. The other thing, in the major paper in Hartford, Connecticut, there was an editorial about 1,000 freshman students coming into 3 of the major high schools in the city. Of those 1,000 students coming in, 100, they were freshmen coming in. Of those 1,000 students coming in, 100 were reading at 9th grade level. 50 were approaching that. But the rest were reading anywhere from a 3rd to a 7th grade level. The question I posed was this: if we could not get our students reading at a 9th grade level in 8 years, how are we going to get them to read at a 12th grade level in 4 years? Chances are it's not going to happen. And the predictions, the numbers say this: within 4 years of leaving school, whether they quit or whether they graduate, 73% of them will be somewhere in the criminal justice system. Over 50% of them will be in there for drug charges. Now, protecting the children is the most common excuse given for the imprisonment of hundreds of thousands of American adults jailed. But despite the ongoing war, the number of children using drugs has been unaffected. And they are using at younger and younger ages. For many children, use is very simply an act of rebellion against a culture that seems oppressive. The answer, of course, is to lock up more children. Arrest them for marijuana. Arrest them for cigarettes. Arrest them for beer. Arrest them for being out too late. And if we're not catching enough of them, let's drug test them. Drug test them for school sports. Drug test them for the chess club. Drug test them when they apply for a driver's license. Or simply, let's drug test them all. Our minority children are criminals and they know it all too well. Why then should they obey our rules? Why should they respect our authority? Why should they play the game? Out of fear? That works only when they are in the line of your vision. Outside of that, our words, our rules, our wishes will be respected only if the child respects you. And respect is not what we engender when we send the state out after our children. Jail them, and they will reject society. Spy on them, and they will retreat to the shadows. Drug test them, and they will find substances for which you are not testing. Teach them that the state is all-powerful, and that power of the state is to be used as a primary method of controlling behavior, and they will grow up to use that power against the state to do the things unintended by our Constitution. Or simply, they will overthrow the government. Since marijuana smokers are mostly nice, hard-working, honest, and healthy people, how can it be justifiable to subject them to arrest, since it is not nearly as harmful as we have been led to believe? How is it justifiable to subject good people to arrest for doing something they believe enhances their lives? Americans who do not smoke marijuana have only been subjected to the propaganda about it. They believe that all use is abuse. Medical marijuana must be brought to the forefront among minorities. Most of the patients we see are overwhelmingly white. Blacks just aren't informed about medical marijuana. The gap between those who smoke pot and those who don't is especially wide among older African Americans. Bridging that gap is the key to bringing black folks on board. The arrest and conviction rate among blacks is not as exorbitant as for crack, but it is still way out of proportion. The hypocrisy of politicians admitting they smoked pot in the past, but support criminalizing others has got to be exploited. The racist reasoning that President Nixon's comments that blacks are the problem as he was declaring war on marijuana also has to be utilized as much as possible. People concerned with the progress in virtually any social issue have to come to understand that the first step would be to develop a peaceful drug policy. We have to learn the importance of providing funding for grassroots organizations. It will serve as proof for history that force and coercion simply do not bring about change in human behavior. We have to find the funding for grassroots organizations. We need speakers in as many states as possible. Then we will be able to begin to accomplish this new paradigm with minorities through thoughtful displays of our belief in the power of compassion, not punishment. And friends, this must begin with the legalization of marijuana. Thank you.
So, I have to say, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at other two people that I have to introduce, and I was like, now I understand why men like beauty contests. Because you get a chance to like have people